all good. We need a mic, I guess. So, can you guys kill those doors? That way LobbyCon is not killing us. So my name's Jim Beechey. I lead the security organization at Consumers Energy. We are a combined physical cyber security org at this point. My background though is cyber, so I'm kind of an incident response log sim kind of guy by heart. Before I start, I was a little inspired by Amanda's talk this morning. And a lot of people don't like to talk about mental health issues in security, but I am an anxiety sufferer. People don't think of people in, I have this big job at a Fortune 500 company. How can this guy be an anxiety sufferer? But I am. And so if anybody here wants to talk about that, I'm willing to as well. There are a lot of mental health issues in our community, in our teams, in our lives, and so the more we can talk about that, I think the better off we are. So happy to share any of those stories as well. But as we sort of kick off the security piece of Converge, I'm going to talk about metrics, and this is by no means the sexiest talk here. It's certainly no massive hacking, but I think, and I talked about this last year in a keynote I did for B-Sides, I believe that one of the problems we have in our industry is we reach out to me on Twitter or email, find me around here. I'm happy to continue talking about this. So this is, my view of the security operations we really want. We want a well-oiled machine running like a factory. The reality is, this is a lot of times what we have. Things cobbled together, patched together. Frankly, you probably know all the holes that you have. You hate it every time you have an incident and you don't have that one log you really need. Or how did we miss MS 08067 again, right? It's things like that that really drive us crazy. And so my vision in metrics is really about how do we start performing better as a security operations function. And it is very much my vision right now is how do we do that at the grassroots levels. You will hear a lot of metrics talks and a lot of people speak in terms of I will quantify risk to the board, right? That's not my vision. I don't know that it exists yet. I'd love if we could quantify things perfectly, but I personally believe that where we have to start first is getting our operations or sort of getting our security team in order and getting some of these things developed. And then once we have the pillars sort of taken care of, then maybe that will feed up to something bigger. So I take a little bit of a different approach than a lot of times you'll hear. I'm certainly open to dialogue, but I kind of like to build bottom up rather than top down, and that's what we're trying to do. So the other reason you might want metrics is you don't have the ability to sell security in your organization, whether you being an individual contributor. By the way, nothing wrong with having some metrics as an individual, or certainly as a manager or as a leader. Metrics can help you drive that performance in your organization. So that's another good reason why you may want them. Candidly, this could be another reason. You just want to impress the boss and get that promotion. There is nothing like when someone asks you for a status update saying, yep, I'm 68% done. By March 25th, I'll be 84% complete. If you said that to your boss, typically, they'd be like, ooh, nobody talks to me like that. That means, number one, you have a plan. You can measure the plan. You know where you're at. And you can keep track of your performance. I will tell you, this is what we're trying to drive towards, but it's not something we typically see. So if you're an individual contributor and you're asked to do something, if you can talk in those terms, you can really stand out, candidly. So I would encourage that for anyone. All right, let's talk, and I'm going to talk a little more in detail on some of these slides, spend a little more time. Let's talk a little bit about what I think good metrics are, and there are many definitions, but for me, these are kind of the pillars. The top two, if you can't make a decision or take some kind of an action because of the metric, you probably should throw it out. Now, I will talk in our framework about what we call them track-only metrics. They're kind of about situational awareness. You can have some of those as well. But if you're going to measure something and have some kind of a target, have some kind of a goal, boy, you better take some action or have it help you make some decision is really where I land. And question your metrics, because when you first start this, you will make many crappy ones. We still have some. Matt may have given me crap about one this morning that he wants to ask about. We still are on this journey, and we have changed and evolved over time, partly by asking ourselves, is there really value in this? And then the third thing is you have to define why it matters. And I'll get into this a little bit, but you are going to be sharing metrics with people who have no flipping clue what you do. Okay? If it can't speak to every person who walks up to it, including your mom, that's my litmus test, then you have to be able to do that. And I say that not by the title or whatever, but you have to have a sentence or description that describes why this thing is important. Because you're going to be pushing these up. People will not know your business. You have to be able to explain that to people. And frankly, if you can't say why it matters, then maybe why are you tracking it is a good question. So that's kind of the simple litmus test for me. There's a lot of other good talks, theories, books, lists on this topic. I like to keep it fairly simple, and this is where we've started. Okay, let's talk about our framework. And I hope you guys can see that fairly well. It's hard to see from my angle, but part of this is the security team, and then part of this is the company. We really, in our organization, we have 4 different kinds of metrics that we're involved in. EICP, which is a company term, this is basically a metric that would this is a metric that would be part of an employee's bonus structure. Okay, so high level, the whole company. Yes, we actually have one. And by the way, I see Jeremy taking a picture. Anybody you're welcome to take a picture. But anybody who emails me, I will send you these slides. So don't feel like you have to take pictures or take notes. Just shoot me an email, hit me on Twitter, and I will send you these slides. Happy to do that. Anyway, first point is that we actually have a security metric at the company enterprise level. I'll talk about that later. Very proud that we actually have that. It's pretty rare. We're one of, let's say, 12 metrics for the entire company, which is pretty phenomenal. Now we're moving into our team. We have, 3 different types of metrics: improvement, operational, and track only. And I will talk about each of these in detail in a further slide. So top kind of being the company, and then the second being what the security team is defined as the metrics we use. Then people will say, okay, well, what do you do with these? Do you have some fancy Tableau dashboard or, those kinds of things? Not yet. Yes, I'd like to get there. But we have a concept at the company. The company's been going through kind of a lean journey where we have operating reviews. And so we have a regular cadence where we have daily, every day, an operating review, weekly and monthly. Okay? Our, don't think I have a slide on that, no. Our daily operating reviews are not really about metrics yet, although we're going to evolve there, meaning when a metric would turn red, someone would hopefully talk about it. It'll be okay, Matt, I promise. I get to make fun of people on my team, right? That's part of my privilege as a speaker. But today we use that daily operating review for situational awareness. So we want the team to know what's going on. What incidents have we had? What physical security items have we had? Do we have any compliance concerns? Do we have any operational issues? That's what we use it for, situational awareness. But ultimately, as we develop more real-time, more dashboarding, we will evolve to talking about why did X turn red. Yes, ma'am?
For our daily cadence, how long are you spending on that with it?
Usually less than 5 minutes. Great point. I love that point. Thank you for bringing it up. Has to be fast. Or you'll drive people crazy. And it's just a phone call. You don't have to show up. It's a quick, fast. Actually, 5 minutes is usually the maximum. It's often quite quicker. But it's things like, hey, and our IR team had 74 events yesterday, we had one incident, and we have one new Sev 5 vulnerability that we're looking at. The one incident was, Executive B clicked on a phishing email, we had to quarantine. It's that kind of thing. Physical security. Woo! Is that better? Yeah. Thanks, Kyle. Thank you. Kyle Anders, everyone, Kyle Anders. I thought we were mood lighting for a minute here. And I don't see well in the dark, so I definitely better not to go over here too well. So anyway, it is a quick cadence for the dailies, because you will drive people crazy by adding another big meeting. And I know when I first did this, the team was like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? They didn't believe that it was going to be short. Doug's over here laughing. Truth. And then the first one was like, people joined late and they missed it. And, they were like, oh, okay. And we've kept that cadence going pretty darn well. By the way, it's also optional unless you're reporting out, meaning I'm not going to force everybody if hopefully you want to know what's going on in our department, so when somebody stops you in the hallway and asks you, hey, I heard there was an employee who witnessed a shooting yesterday in Lansing, true story, that you have some awareness of that. That's the goal, okay? Weekly operating review is up to an hour long. It is focused on our operational metrics and heavily focused on anything that's red. So if your operational metric is red, you are required to report out why it's red and what you're doing. Okay? Now, why it's red, not because I want to beat you up as the boss, okay, and we'll talk about this a little bit. You have to have a culture that's okay with red. If you don't bother doing this, frankly, because if you have a bunch of green metrics all the time, woo, we're happy. I think you're actually in a worse place, because you're telling people everything's okay, and then you're going to have a problem, and then you're really in trouble, right? But anyway, that's a whole nother sort of rant. But we focus on the red because that's where the problems are. Candidly, we typically don't even talk about the green ones because I don't want to waste people's time. All right? If an operational metric is green, we're in a great place. Let's move on. Let's talk about what's red. And that expectation of that owner is that they're coming with what their plan is to get it back in tolerance. Okay? So we call it countermeasures. You may notice a lot of lean words that I'm throwing around here. We're, again, as a company, we're kind of going through this lean journey. And then monthly operating reviews are, again, an hour cadence, but we focus in monthly on our improvement metrics. And as I explain those, that should make more sense. Every person who owns an improvement metric reports out at that monthly cadence. We focus, though, on the red ones. So we'll spend a little bit of time usually in the greens, but it's focusing on ones that are red in that meeting. So that kind of makes sense at a high level, those two. And then the third sort of pillar right now is that metrics are visual, meaning they are somewhere on a wall that you can literally walk up and touch them. Today that means, unfortunately, a lot of paper, and I really struggled with this when we first did this. Longer term, we have some kind of digital signage, and we're going to be working on some more real-time dashboarding. But for now, at least all the improvement metrics are paper, and the operation are kind of 50-50 as we've gone through this journey. I do believe long term, all of our operational will be real-time, automated on a dashboard. I don't know that we'll actually ever really want to get to improvement metrics being sort of electronic, because we see value in having them posted on the wall that people can actually walk up to them, see them, touch them, kind of easily get through them. And there's something about that. It's one of the things consultants at the company have recommended, even though as a tech person I really struggle sometimes with that. But visual management, and I will show you some actual pictures of our walls so that you can get an idea of what we're talking about, okay? So first, this is a really boring slide, but it's important. This is how we document a metric. This would be an improvement metric in this case. Maybe I'll slide over here. Maybe I won't slide over here. We tested. We failed. Yeah, we found the bug. Of course, my pointer isn't working either. All right, well, we're going to have to, I would do Ed Skoda's sock puppets if I was that good. At the top, you'll see who the owner is and the date. Yes, we have individual owners. Believe in that just from an accountability standpoint, really important. What the metric or the improvement actually is where it says improvement priority. So in this case, for instance, on our physical security side, we actually have an improvement metric, a goal to reduce tailgating at the company by X%, because we last year had a lot of tailgating incidents, unfortunately. So there's an example for you. And by the way, I will actually talk about real metrics at the end, because that's one of my pet peeves, that people talk about metrics all the time and then never show you what they're actually freaking tracking. So if you want to talk about that later, I will show you those. Then a description. Meaning a high-level sentence or two description of the metric. It's funny, you would think this would be easy stuff. This was the hardest thing we've ever done, is getting people to agree on all of these categories. Why it matters, I mentioned that earlier. You have to be able to show people why this thing actually matters to the company. And then what we call a problem statement, meaning this, again, the lean culture, is what's the problem you're trying to solve, okay? Why does it matter? What is your target condition that you're going after? And then secondarily, we have what is the target, meaning what determines whether it's red or green. I'll give you an example. Encryption, laptop encryption, right? We all encrypt our laptops. Well, we have a target that we want to make sure we're always at a certain percentage of our laptops being encrypted, okay? And then the calculation, again, holy smokes, great debate. You would think this would be easy. We spent months arguing about calculations and descriptions, and finally we drew a line in the sand and said, okay, we can't talk about this anymore. We have to put this into our template and define it. And literally each leader is going to sign off on that calculation and description. Because you'd ask somebody and they'd be like, well, I take and then other people would be like, huh? Super painful. Months of pain. If you're going to do this, define this stuff in writing up top. I think I say that later too. And then this next section is kind of the high-level plan of what you're going to do to meet that improvement objective. And then this other section over here is historical data, if you have it. Obviously, it's not graphed. And then what your current data is. And there's a concept here in an improvement metric where what you need to do is create a plan. So you're at X and you want to get to Y. What does your plan look? And we call it a glide path. So how do you get to Y? What's your journey going to look like? So again, we're happy to share this stuff. Our template, you can use whatever template you want, but if I would give you one thing out of here, just define the why it matters, the description, and the calculation, and save yourself a lot of pain. Yes, sir?
Would it be fair to say that those have to be in more general terms so that when people outside your room read them, they understand
Yes,
what you're doing?
Absolutely. The question from Matt was, is it fair to say those have to be in general terms? Yes. So let me give an example of Matt's metric. Matt owns our improvement around privileged account management, right? We're putting accounts into a password vault. So Jim's phrase is, a certain percentage are managed. What does managed mean? Is the password in the vault? Yes. And Matt and I had a disconnection here last year. I'm putting passwords in the vault, Jim. They're managed. Jim's definition was, it also includes rotation. The metric went from here to here, right? And we've reconciled that. But the point is, you have to define those key words. What's a privileged account? Right? You literally start walking through these things, and it's a lot harder than you think. So for us, it's an admin level account. It's a service account. I think we use the word application. I've drawn a blank, but we have to break those things down to that level. Otherwise, you're going to have endless confusion, or your metric won't sort of stand up to scrutiny. All right, enough on A3s. I talked about weekly operating reviews in detail, or operating reviews over here, so I don't know why I have that slide, but I do. So any other questions on these before I move on? Let's see how we're doing on time. Yes. Yes, sir.
You talked about tracking personal
Yeah.
Some tools that your people are using to track their own personal?
Yeah, good question. So we don't, tools, the question is what tools are people using to track their own work? Have you ever done Kanban? Anybody use Kanban tools? Lean Kit? Somebody's waving their hands. What's that? Hi, Dan. Another member of our team. I love me some Kanban. So one of the reasons we like those is it has the ability, Lean Kit is a tool. It's actually free for kind of personal use. You can try it out. I actually used it at home to do a move. And now my wife and I have a Kanban board. Yes, I'm a geek. For improvements we want to make on the new house. I don't know how I got her to agree to this, but she did. The beautiful thing about Lean Kit is you can have a card that is your overall card and then a card that are sub-cards. And so as those cards get completed, it will actually automatically calculate the percentage for you. Really simple way. I like that. Look, I've seen people use spreadsheets. You'll get our PMs who are like, we will have a Gantt chart, and it'll hope none of our PMs are in the room. It will be awesome, I've got some DevOpsy people, Craig's in the room. He's like, forget your big plan. I'm going to iterate, right? I got 3 things to do in this sprint, and that's all I'm worried about right now. Whatever works for you, really, whatever works for you. But I love some Kanban. Do you have a question, Jeremy?
Yeah, for the weekly operating reviews, are those just reiterating the dailies just on a weekly basis, or what else?
No, we actually don't talk about situational awareness. Those are purely operational metrics. So weekly is operational metrics only. Each owner of an operational metric has to be there, and we talk about those. Good questions. All right. This is our primary wall, straight from our office, and hopefully there's nothing anybody can get too much information out of. But
I have a question.
Yes, sir. You notice that my picture is not included in that picture. That's because I got to take it. So oh gosh, I know I got to talk about this. So what's over here on this side of the wall is there was a concept of when we made this thing, and by the way, this is a fathead, Michigan company. These things are beautiful. It took 2 guys the entire day to hang this thing. Yeah, it cost me $1,000 or whatever, but in the scope of things, this has been awesome. So highly recommend it. But I'll go through it. On the top is obviously our team. The deter, detect, comply, and recover is kind of our purpose statement, why we are here. We've got our vision statement, world-class security program delivered at the best place to work in Michigan. The company vision statement, and then our strategies here in the right-hand side there. And then here are all of our improvement metrics, and then here are our operational metrics in more of a visual display. I'll get to the part on the left. So the idea on the left was that we wanted to put something on the board, and somebody asked me, well, what are the 4 things you think about every day? And so we put that on the board, and then one of our creative folks drew a sketch of me, and there's an actual picture of me on the wall as well. I thought it was a little cheesy, but sometimes you got to let your creative people roll. So this is our board. So these metrics, this is our main hallway where most of the security team sits. You can see we've divvied the metrics into different types, but you can see that A3. We call it that A3 is the type of document that I showed here. Sorry, when I say A3, this is what it means or what it is. You can see those posted on the wall there in different states of red and green with different kind of plans and that kind of stuff. So this is how we visually display them in our office today. Any questions on that? This has been really good. You never know when you try these things and you kind of get a little creative how it's going to go, but it's really been good for us to have this front and center. I think it's helped, how many people actually know what their vision statement and their purpose statement for their teams are, so we actually put it on the wall. It's been good. Yes? No, good question.
The next one, does it say morale?
It does, yes. So,
How do you measure that? I'm curious.
yeah, great. I'll talk about that one. Let me get there, okay? But yeah, so we put them into buckets, and again, this is a lean methodology: safety, quality, cost, delivery, morale. And when we say safety at the company, obviously we're an electric utility, we have a huge focus on safety. We do a /security as well. That's where we put security items into that safety bucket. So I will make sure I get to your question. This is so if the wall I just showed you is over here, and then this is kind of a collaboration area in that space, and we have a nice Surface Hub there where we do our operating reviews, the monthly and the weekly, in this space here. And so we can project those visual things on that screen, and then we can obviously bring in people who are around the state, video conference, that kind of thing. So this just gives you an idea of how we do what we do. Again, it's not perfect. It certainly has evolved over time, and finding office space sometimes is a big challenge. We actually took down large cubicles to build this because we really wanted to have that space. But it gets used a lot for things other than the operating reviews as well. Okay, EICP. I'm going to talk now a little more specifically about the metrics, how they're defined, and then we'll get into some of the actual metrics themselves. EICP metrics, enterprise-wide for the company. I talked kind of to the employee bonus structure, and security has one. It's around phishing. Very challenging topic, but the reason we do phishing click rate is it's probably the most important thing we do as a security professionals, but yet it's the thing a lot of us don't focus a lot of time on because it's really hard, right? Somewhere, depending on what study you read, 60 to 90% of breaches, incidents start with phishing. So you've got to be working this. So we actually have a defined click rate for the company. If we fall above that click rate, our bonus structure is going to be impacted. So that's a pretty cool thing to have that as a company. We're pretty excited about it. This is our phishing click rate wall. Again, people said, will you let us be creative? And I said, yes. And then I walked in one day and there was a gigantic fish on the wall. This is another fat head. I'll kind of talk through this a little bit. We have a full mascot that I've dressed up in. Sam's been in it over there. We literally go to all kinds of company events in this mascot. It's hotter than heck. I did it for 4 hours one day. I will never do that again. I got out of there and I'm like, I can smell myself. I need to go home. But culture around this is so important, and we've really spent a lot of time focusing on that culture. This is our CEO, right, with Finn at a all-leadership event taking a selfie. What more can I ask for than that, right? But I think the point I want to underscore here is, again, because this is so visual and so aware, people come see this, they come check out on how performance is, how we're doing. We've driven a lot of process improvements through this wall because we've made problems visible and we've been able to solve them. Just another good example of how we treat, because it's an EICP metric at the company, it gets a lot of visibility and a lot of attention. So we put a lot of focus and specialized time and effort on that metric. So this is the only one that will have its own wall, so to speak. At the company, they're called rally rooms, where there are literally a room dedicated to certain metrics because they're that important. We decided to do a wall. We're actually having all the C-level executives are coming next week to see our review of our wall around that metric. So really happy to talk more about this. Sam, I'm going to point her out, who's in the back. Raise your hand. She coordinates a lot of, as well as some other people, all of our phishing activities. So if you want to talk phishing, she's a great person to talk to. Anyway, happy to talk more about this. Just wanted to give you that visualization of what an EICP metric sort of entails at the company. And by the way, we are by far the most creative. I'm actually a little interested to see what the executive's reaction is when they come down and see this fat head. And I mean, they love Finn. This is our mascot, Finn, but it's a very different wall than what you typically see in a, I am an executive, I will have structure, and, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes, but I'm looking forward to it. Okay, that was EICP. Improvement metrics. So in an improvement metric, as you would expect, we are trying to measure something we are trying to improve. Meaning, we want to reach a certain place and we have no idea how we're going to get there. We've defined what the end state is, but currently we are failing to meet that. So I'll talk through a few of those. I'll give you one example now. We have decided to go on a privacy initiative in our team where we actually own data privacy. We're standing up a program. We've set a goal from a maturity level. We are well below that goal today. That's an improvement metric for us. How are we going to take that journey to get to that privacy maturity level? They do require an A3, as I mentioned before. The A3 is this thing right here. So any improvement metric has to have an A3 and be posted on the wall. And then a plan, or what we call a glide path, on how you're going to get there. And these are reviewed monthly. Okay? So very much, I don't know where, I know I want to aspire to something, I don't know how I'm going to get there. So this is what improvement metrics focus on. Operational, very different. They measure performance at a specific time, and sort of they will flag when things are out of tolerance. So the kind of the point there is, you know today, you have set a standard that you know is what you want to be. You know, for instance, encryption percentage. We want to have 95% of our laptops encrypted at all times. Okay? We always have some give because they're doing Windows 10 deployments, or they're, you know, rebuilding some machines, or, you know, you're always going to have some sort of variance. But if we are below 95%, that is a problem for us. It goes red. We flag it. We make some action. So operational, you have to already know what your standard is and, frankly, be meeting it at some point. No action for green. If you're green, you're good. We kind of move on. I will say occasionally we will do a deep dive in green metrics just to make sure we're really good. Occasionally you find things that aren't quite right. But red, anytime an operational metric turns red, even though we have a weekly cadence, you should take immediate action. So what is that owner doing today to fix that problem? And I've talked repeatedly that we're weekly on the reds. Yes?
Do you talk in this presentation about the difference between immediate action and immediate fault?
What context do you mean, Don?
You mentioned briefly about you can't have an environment where this is red.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the question is around, is it immediate action or immediate fault? Meaning, the point is, with these metrics, is the point for me is kind of self-governance, meaning whoever owns that knows they've got to go do something. If they just go fix it and all of a sudden we're green the next day, that's phenomenal. And I will celebrate that till all day long. I don't want to have a culture where people are feeling like the metrics are sort of, they want to be risk averse and they're nervous they're going to be red. We actually celebrate being red because we know that we've identified an actual problem and now we can really do something about it. Now that is a tough cultural issue. Some companies do a much better job than others of that, but that's what we focus on. It's not about, Matt, your metric's red, you suck, go fix it, or, there's going to be consequences. The real test is when Matt shows up with a red metric, does he have a plan? Is he working it? Is he taking it seriously? The thing that's going to upset me is if we are just like, no big deal. That's what's going to get me going, not about being red. So, good question. I hope I answered that. Then track only. Track only is a little bit of a controversial topic. It's one I'm pretty passionate about. But one of the issues with metrics is you can really create unintended consequences. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But track only metrics for me are things that we want to know about, we want to have some situational awareness but if we track the target, we might actually incentivize bad behavior. Okay, so I'll take something like compliance violations, which is one of ours. If I set targets for no compliance violations, what might happen? People stop reporting, exactly. People start covering up. I don't want to be in that space. Now, do I want to minimize compliance violations? Heck yeah, I do. One of our sort of long-term, or kind of when we define world-class to us is compliance violations by an external auditor near zero. The point being of that is I want self-identification all day long. So we actually don't set targets around strict things like this. Security incidents. How many times have you've talked to people, well, I don't want to have security incidents. Well, then you just don't look, and then you won't have any until you have the one, right? So it's things like that we don't want to have bad consequences for a metric, and we'll talk about that. Track only, no A3. They are reported monthly for situational awareness. That's what they are. So if we see trends, if all of a sudden our compliance violations spike, yeah, we're going to look at what's going on, right? Or a policy violation in a specific area, maybe there's something we need to do, but I don't want to hold someone accountable to a target that just doesn't make sense. Okay, here are my lessons learned meme style, and these are actual memes I found on Google. It's amazing, what you can find. I didn't have to make any. So first, start small. I made this mistake. We started too big. We're getting big again, but I believe that's because we've matured and we actually kind of have a process and a framework to go through. When you first start tracking metrics, you are going to have this feeling of, I want to have 36 of them and they will roll up and they will be great. Start small, especially if you're the leader, because your team can only consume so much. We all suffer from this sort of security perfection. I don't know what the right word is, but I call it kind of the security perfection syndrome, where we all want things to be perfect and secure. The reality is it's not going to be. Same thing in metrics. People will say, well, that doesn't include blah, 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 or you're taken out, da-da-da, or, you got to start somewhere. So don't worry about perfection. This is the funniest one. Math is hard. When you're doing an annual average, you can't just average the months of the averages, right? You actually have to take the whole data set. This has bit us many times. Just remember your basics, and more importantly, have somebody take a look at the metrics who is completely sort of removed from them. We have found several mathematical errors that would make high school and college professors cringe from amazingly intelligent people. So, no criticism. Just math is hard, even if it's not. And I think I really talked about this already, but you can do a lot of harm with bad metrics. Primarily, the thing that I worry about the most is my team is all about people, meaning if we have great people, we can be successful. If we don't, we're going to fail. And if you do too much on the metric side, human beings will kind of feel like they're not part of the equation, right? And so I always am a little cognizant of and worry about if we get to the point where we're measuring every little thing, how much of that human element are we taking out of the equation? So just a caution there, something I think about and worry about when we're doing this. All right, I'm going to do our metrics first so that we make sure we get through these, and then I'll tell a few stories. These are our improvement metrics. I'll highlight a couple. Mean time to detect for me is like, it's everything right now, meaning how quickly between when something bad happened did we detect it. When we had a security incident and we detected it, what's that time? You have to measure that, and you have to try to reduce that as much as possible. You can still win, right, in security. It also takes a mature team to even measure it. Mention the employee index, so I will hit this now. How do we measure morale? We measure it in 3 different ways. 1, retention rate. Yes, that's really tough because sometimes my people are going to get amazing offers that I have to shake their hand and say, yes, you should take that job. I hate to say this, but you should. But I stand up on retention rate. 2, we have an employee engagement survey at the company every year. So we have a percentage that is derived out of that called the employee engagement score, meaning how engaged are our people. We have a target around that. And then the third component is a new number, which is employee empowerment index. So there is a survey again that defines how empowered people feel and includes things like, are the processes that I work with as easy as they could be or should be? Are new ideas welcomed, and those kinds of things. By the way, we suck at that as a company. We're really working hard on that, on that aspect. So it's those three numbers that make up that metric. Does that answer your question? Don't be afraid of that one, though. I mean, when I sign up for, look, I'm going to be read sometimes on retention, which, by the way, my retention number, my goal is 95%. I know that I can never be, the reality is I'm likely not going to be 100%. We've had staff get offers double and triple their salary. You have to, shake their hand and say, congratulations. But if I'm at 60, I think there's a problem. So, any other questions on these? Again, I'm happy to talk after or later in the next couple days. I'm not going to highlight all of our operational metrics. I am going to highlight two, but I'm willing to share all of them. I just didn't want to put them all in here. We are working right now on really defining how each of our key security controls by workstation and server, how they are performing. And if you take one thing back that you should do, I believe it's this. The number of times we have looked at what we believed was a security control that was fully implemented and found out it was hardly implemented is actually a little bit frustrating. When you think that you have 95% coverage in encryption and you find out it's 58%, those are nights you don't sleep very well. My point being, if you don't watch, if you don't measure, if you don't track, how do you really know? And yes, it might be some other team's fault, but it's still your security control at the end of the day. If that laptop gets lost, it's still your problem. So these are the things that we track, these are new ones that we're working on. We've got others that we track today around like percentage of assets vulnerability scanned in a week. We use BitSight to measure our public presence from a security posture. We want to be in the advanced category there. Things of that nature. Happy to talk and share on any of those. And then I mentioned track only. This other slide is servers, just the same kind of thing. Anybody do an incident response and you run an incident and you don't have the logs you need? That's a bad day. Again, it happens more frequently than you think. And then track only, for us, these are the 4 track only metrics that we have. I mentioned policies, compliance, and number of incidents. We want to know about these things, but I'm very cautious that if we have targets around these, we might have problems. So I'll go back here and tell a couple stories just for awareness, and again, then we'll finish with questions. So I believe really strongly mean time to detect, and we had a really interesting time last year where we had a couple of security incidents that were way out of tolerance. There were outliers, and the reason they were is because we didn't have the right security visibility in kind of this obscure area of our enterprise. And so the team's like, well, Jim, why do we count that, right? We don't have visibility. That's not fair. Well, I erred on the side of counting it. When we actually went to the board with this number, we actually shared both numbers, when we had the visibility and when we didn't. But the beautiful thing about this is, by tracking and showing red, that business owner is now saying to me, well, how do we fix this? Well, we fix it by XYZ team taking over responsibility for this asset. Oh, well, we can work on that. Send me a proposal. So my point being, by being willing to track something, by willing to be transparent, by being willing to share red up to the senior executive and board level, we're able to make progress. So the point wasn't to my incident response team, you guys suck because we missed, a commodity AV that was on a piece of equipment for a really long time, hypothetically. The point was, we have a problem, how do we fix it? Well, here's how we address that. Just don't trust your consoles. If you go look at the AV or the encryption console, you're seeing everything it knows about. What about all the things it doesn't know about? This has bit us so many times. So where are you getting your data? How do you get third-party proof? If you're an auditor, think about that kind of separation of duties mentality, or how do you get true evidence? Those are really important. And I'll tell you, I almost gave up on patching. I really did. I was so close. But it was really us making the performance and the numbers visible to senior leadership that changed the tide on this. And now we have some aggressive targets around patching. Frankly, I think they're a little too aggressive, but for us, it's a phenomenal place to be. We fought patching for so long, and we did it, candidly, we did it in the wrong way. And once we shared data openly, transparently, that's when we've been able to make some changes. So with that, I will take any final questions. I want to be cognizant of time. Yes, sir.
So as a whole, this is pretty ambitious, this entire set of metrics.
Yes.
What has it been, and it sounds like it's worked internally for your team, there's been a lot of good buy-in. What has the buy-in been like from the company leadership? You gave one anecdote, but as a whole, are these metrics appreciated upwards?
Yeah, the answer is yes, they are. So the question is, are they appreciated upward? Partially, I'm in a good place because the company is going through this journey as well, this lean journey that I mentioned where we want to measure things and we want to improve processes. So partially I have that going for me. The CEO, her platform really is this lean culture. But what we've done with them more often than not is we've used the numbers to validate and tell our stories up the chain. So if we, I go to the board twice a year. If I'm sharing where we're at, I'll bring along a metric that helps them see that, and then maybe in 6 months I'll show them that metric, how we've improved, or maybe how it's gotten worse and we're going to do something else. So they've been very well received, but I will tell you they're in the context of bigger issues or storytelling. Does that make sense? And I will tell you our phishing click rate, as much as it sounds like people would hate us, they hate us in a good way. They punch me at the coffee bar, you jerk, you caught me on that test. It's that kind of stuff. It's a positive, not a punitive culture around that. And I would, if I could tell you anything around those things, keep it positive. What else? Yes, Jeremy.
For your improvement metrics, do you find that there's we can improve everything, right? We can improve lots of stuff. So do you find that there's a good limit, 1 per person, 2 per person? So
we actually, I don't want to be, I feel like we may even have too many. If we hit 10, we have too many. And that is across the entire security org. We're about, if you count interns, 70 people. So if that gives you a perspective. We don't view these as something that goes in an individual's performance review. This is a departmental improvement. So we keep them under 10. I would tell you our consultants would tell us, 5 or 6. They think we might have too many, but it's kind of where we're at today. Good question. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned kicking the tires a little bit if the metric is green, but more often than not you leave it alone.
Yeah.
So how do you find that balance between determining if a metric is maybe too easy and that's why it's always green versus that sales mentality where you keep pushing people because they're doing well?
Yeah. Great question. How do you balance you've been green, so continuous improvement? We literally are struggling with this right now. I had a meeting this past week where the person who runs our operating reviews and somebody that's kind of our coach is looking at some of our operational metrics and saying, we should go after the next thing. And my argument right now is because we've already set a target, unless I really view that incremental gain is going to somehow make our program better, then why do it? Now, if it would, right, then let's do it. No question, right? If I'm at 10 missing patches per server and I want to get to 5, right, you increment. But if we've already set a standard that we're comfortable with, then I'm just sort of nitpicking numbers. And my argument is what I'd rather do in that scenario, and this is what we are doing, is we're going to add more metrics, right? We're going to add more operational metrics. You guys should be cheering. So that we know more of where we're at. So if I'm going to invest more time, let's add more rather than... So that's kind of how I strike the balance. But it is a discussion about each, because you can debate. And your lean coaches and such will absolutely be like, we need to continuously improve. Let's get that from 95 to 96. And you'd be like, come on, Good, really good question. I think yes?
I think as a follow-up to that question, do you ever, if something is green for a long time, do you ever think, instead of ratcheting up the metric, like the target, instead do like a review of whether or not you're actually accurately capturing?
Yes, absolutely. In the lean world, a lot of people call these go and sees. So yes, meaning the question from Rich was, do you ever, actually go check and see if this thing is really green? Absolutely. And a lot of times we uncover not things that an individual did bad, but maybe a communication gap we had where I'm thinking one thing, I give the example with Matt and I, and that person's thinking another thing. So yes, you have to go check, you have to audit, you have to do those things just to make sure. Because the theory is that if you're green all the time, that's a problem too, candidly, because you're really not identifying the issues. Good question. So I think I'm running on time. I'm happy to talk afterwards or at lunch. I'll be here tomorrow as well. So enjoy your time here at Converge. This is one of my favorite events of the year, and look forward to meeting anybody I haven't met before. So please come and say hi. Thank you.